Keep in touch with the Wolf Connection podcast on our Instagram handle at the Wolf Connection Pod, or email us your questions, comments, and guest ideas to podcast@wolfconnection.org. Thank you for your support, and howls to you all. Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Calvin. Another Wolf film is going to be debuting actually after this podcast airs, but it will be doing a tour of sorts, so you guys will be able to see it. And this is really about the introduction of wolves into Colorado. We have two incredible human beings today who are really going to discuss not only the creation of that film, but maybe shed a little bit of light on how things are going in Colorado. And we have some updates on the license plate fundraiser initiative that has actually gone on and done some really great things. But to introduce our two guests today, from Montrose, Colorado, he is the Southern Rockies Representative of the Endangered Species Coalition. That is Ryan Sedgeley, and the director of the film Welcome Home. He's also the founder and chief filmmaker of Real Earth Films, and that is Alan Lacy. He's coming to us from Phoenix, Arizona. Gentlemen, thank you for joining Stephen and I. How are you both doing?
Thanks for having us.
Of course. And just thank you to Matt Barnes if he's listening. So Matt, thank you for making this connection with Alan and Ryan and us to not only discuss the film, but really get on board and revisit Colorado. I think once the reintroduction happened, we sort of let the dust settle a little bit and things have started to take shape. I know we saw there were a couple of wolf pups, or at least one new wolf pup that's been born in there. So that's been considered a success. We've also had some depredation. So things are going kind of up and down, but we're back and really talking about how things are happening. But first off, what we always like to do is, Ryan, I'll start with you and then Alan will go to you. Just give people a little bit about your background, where you grew up. I was reading a little bit about your bio. You were really into the nature, wildlife space as a young boy. So how did this hit you and what guided you onto the journey to ultimately be in the Endangered Species Coalition?
Yeah, thanks. So I live in Montrose, Colorado now, but I was born and raised in the Denver area. And I have to credit my late grandpa and lovely grandma with inspiring my appreciation for wildlife and conservation. They had a great little cabin up in Leadville, Colorado, which is up above 10,000 feet, nestled in some aspens with a beautiful view of Mount Elbert. And so growing up, they would take me and my brothers up there, and we would just get to play and really appreciate them, see the hummingbirds and all the different animals. And it was just an amazing, amazing time. I think that was like a really foundational part of this passion. And I also have to credit my amazing wife, Nicole, because she really helped transform me into a true nature nerd through our time in Yellowstone together. Wildlife biology. And yeah, she got me hooked in such a beautiful, wonderful way.
That's awesome. Alan, same question to you. I'm reading off the bio. Nature Boy was your nickname, I guess, back when you were younger. And again, really seemed that the bug had bit you so early on. And I think you were starting to learn about film and things like that as a young man, a young boy. Again, describe how you got into this and what was the draw for you to start making films and to be in this space.
Yeah, so definitely the moniker my parents lovingly gave me was Nature Boy. That's mainly because I spent so many hours out in nature, exploring and trying to find. There was a lot of California ground squirrels. I grew up in the Central Valley of California in the agricultural area, so there wasn't like a lot of wildlife. But I watched so many nature documentaries growing up as a kid, and just fell in love with nature. And so I spent as many hours as I could as a kid out trying to find whatever I could. And I had this one really incredible moment where I was actually with my dogs, and we were going through this alfalfa field, and I saw a coyote kind of walking along this levee, and it was quite a ways away. And I don't know what came over me, but I got this crazy idea. Let me just howl. So I put my head back and just got the coyote to look at me, ears pricked, and it came walking right at me, and got closer and closer and closer until all of a sudden I started to see the detail in its fur and its eyes. And I was really able to see like what it felt like I was looking into the eyes of a wolf, really. And it was an amazing moment for me as a kid. And I realized, like, this is the first time I've stared into the eyes of nature itself, it seemed like. And I was hooked ever since. And the nature documentaries and films, went through life, went through school, college, etc. Got a business degree, worked in aviation, hospital administration. And somewhere along the way, I realized my love for nature is still strong. I got to do something about it. And I just out of nowhere decided I'm going to make a film. No idea what I was doing, and just jumped full into it and made a film on Mexican gray wolves for the first film. It went out back in 2017 was when we released it. Went around the film festival circuit, picked up about 17 awards, did pretty well. And I got the bug for making a film at that point. And it just fell in love with the creative process and being able to connect my passion for nature in ways to connect other people the way that I fell in love with nature. And if I can find those moments in nature where I can give people that same experience when I locked eyes with that coyote and find a way that they can connect to nature through the films and the footage that I can capture, that's powerful. That's where change happens. And that's what has fueled me along this whole path to make films. It's finding ways to connect people to nature and to give them hope and give them reasons to support conservation. So that's what really my whole mission is about with Real Earth Films. And, that's why I enjoy what I do.
That's incredible. Was there a documentary or a show when you were a boy or even a young man that stuck with you that you either tried to emulate or pull from? Was there something that really stuck with you in your youth?
I watched a lot of PBS Nature and National Geographic, and I loved the educational components in those. But the show that really comes to mind is a show called Kratts Creatures. And it's the Kratt brothers that really made me really fall in love because the adventure they put into it. So they would go out on these little expeditions, find animals, report back to their home base. And it was just, as a kid, I remember just being enthralled with that show. And that's partly why I'd go out into nature and stuff. It was kind of like reenacting that show, so to speak, for myself. So I think those all of the above kind of combined is kind of where it all comes from. But that show particularly stands out.
That's great. I mean, Ryan, I want to go back to you here. Describe to everybody the overall goal and the mission of the Endangered Species Coalition in your role, because I was looking on the website, and obviously just by the title Endangered Species Coalition, it's very broad and general, and there's a lot of endangered species. So I guess try and pare down, like I say, mission goals of the org overall, and then your specific space that you are in charge of or that you are monitoring as the Southern Rockies representative.
Sure. The Endangered Species Coalition's main goal is to stop the human-caused extinction of our nation's at-risk species, and to protect and restore their habitats, as well as guide these fragile populations along the road to recovery. Now, that's a big goal, and there are a lot of endangered species out there and threatened species, both listed and unlisted. But right now, I'm really focused in Colorado, and I'm focused on supporting wolf reintroduction efforts and building support for the Endangered Species Act and defending the Endangered Species Act, which, as you may know, has been under attack in Congress. There are so many poison pill riders right now in various appropriation bills that are trying to gut the Endangered Species Act of protections for quite a few species. So it's really concerning, and that's our work, is really to try to defend that and stop those bad bills from passing, as well as that's our main mission.
Right. So when you're looking at that, when those bills, and I'm sure we're mostly talking about the Trust the Science bill, which was Representative Boebert, I believe it's Trust the Science Act or bill, whatever it is, the one that she introduced, where, again, mostly talking about wolves attacking ESA. I was in DC for the Cry for the Wild rally, so that was the main focus there. What are the types of information or programming? I'm sure, obviously, talking here with Alan, and we're going to get to the film in just a minute, but what are the ways that the Endangered Species Coalition is trying to rebut some of the information that is maybe being pushed out by Congress, that is being showed that, hey, the ESA doesn't need to be for these certain species. They've already recovered to a certain degree. What's the job of the Endangered Species Coalition in that avenue to make sure that the correct species are still being protected and that ones that may be under attack are getting, relisted either by threatened or whatever it may need to be done?
Yeah, our role is really, we're here, us advocates in the wildlife sphere. We're here to be a voice for the voiceless, for the animals that can't speak for themselves, to defend them and to defend them against attacks from people who just want to see these protections gone so they can, develop or, harm the environment in ways that benefit them individually or score them some kind of culture war points. But unlike Congresswoman Boebert's mis- disingenuous named bill, we really do believe in following the science and actually understand what science means. And so we follow the science. We try to really look and see where our species, what do they need to be considered recovered. And that sometimes that means working with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Sometimes that means holding them accountable. It means holding our state wildlife agencies accountable to make sure that special interests or industrial interests or cattle interests here in the state aren't having an oversized voice, and that the wildlife has a voice too, and that they're given a chance to not only survive but thrive. And I see it personally as a goal to make that happen in a way that it takes care of our wildlife and our people. And I think wolves are actually a really good example of how Colorado is really leading the way in how we do that.
Can you just give us sort of we'll call it a crash course on what the threats to the ESA are at the moment? Rule changes, et cetera, and why does it need protecting, and from what or who?
Yeah, so we have seen, I don't have the exact number in front of me right now, but we have seen a lot of little riders and bills, like I think in the Appropriations Act, the Interior Appropriations Act. Oh gosh, I could look it up, but I think there's at least 26 different riders. I want to say there was even more. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. But there were so many in there, and there's other riders and bills coming from other directions as well. It's largely coming from the Republicans in Congress that are just trying to undermine the ESA in every way they possibly can. They have a long history of trying to do that. They have various reasons. None of them are good, in my opinion, and we've got to fight that. Somewhat concerning, we've seen some of even the Dems become a little shaky on defending what is a very popular law. The public pretty overwhelmingly likes the Endangered Species Act and wants to see these animals protected. But for various reasons, there's a lot of lobbying and money that goes around, and influence and pressure, and we've seen some concerning shifts. And so we are working, with our coalition of other member groups to combat that and to make sure our Congress people understand the importance of this act and what extinction means. Extinction is forever. We don't get to bring that back, and the impacts that has going forward, especially in the context of climate change and our rapid biodiversity loss. Just how important this really, really is.
Are there any suggestions to the ESA that are floating around now that the Endangered Species Coalition would consider productive?
Not that I'm aware of. The Endangered Species Act works. The biggest change that we would like to see is actually seeing it fully funded. We feel 100% confident that if the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was fully funded and could do the work that the Endangered Species Act demands of them, we would have an incredible amount of success. So that's our biggest hope and that's what we'd like to see.
So I'm going to go back to, just to preface too, I think before we get into I say to get into Colorado here for just a minute, because obviously there's been work with Coexistence. There was a huge push, obviously, to get wolves back into Colorado. We had, the vote that happened in 2020, got approved, and then the pause on the ground in 24, right? Yeah, 24, 23? Can't remember. It was
December of 23 is when we first.
December of 23, right before 24, right? Yep. And obviously initiatives put forward with, there were a bunch of different things about obviously not only helping farmers and ranchers out with not only money, but there was an initiative for the Colorado license plate. And I believe the Coloradan, I think I said that correctly, the paper or the news outlet that put it out, in the 6 months since they've started that whole venture, $300,000 has been raised to put into that fund to be able to help coexistence and to help these coexistence measures. For both of you, I'll start with Ryan and then Alan, please piggyback off this. What does that show in, I think even before we were recording, where we were talking, obviously there was a little bit of back and forth about those on the Front Range as opposed to those on the Western Slope who actually have the wolves in their backyards, about who was going to help pay for things and vice versa. This seems like a good first step, obviously, in putting literally money where their mouth is, that they will help. So how does this feel, at least the first 6 months in, and where you see things possibly heading as we go down the road?
Yeah, so this is an incredible success. I mean, to have this many license plates being sold and raising this much money to help is a real commitment from individuals in Colorado who think that making wolf reintroduction successful is worth putting their hard-earned money towards this project. I mean, these are individuals who are saying, I want wolves to be successful, and I want to support my fellow people who are going to be impacted by wolves and are going to have to change their practices and employ range riders and other things that cost money. So I want to take care of my wolves and wildlife, and I want to take care of the people who are my fellow residents in the state. And so that's people putting their hard-earned money out there, individuals saying, yep, I'm going to support these people. I'm going to support ranching. And one of the things that I've been telling in my community is look, whenever you see those wolf plates, that's somebody who's chosen to support the ranching community, and committed their own, money to doing that. And that's layered on top of other really wonderful benefits that the state has made available for primarily the ranching community. There is a really generous compensation plan for when any depredations and damage happens to cattle or other livestock. And there is a initial fund from the General Assembly as well to help with coexistence work out there and preventing conflict. CSU has got a great carnivore coexistence project with a fund there as well. So there's a lot of effort and money and resources being put into this to make sure that this works. And that's a huge thing in my mind. That's really a game changer.
Yeah, that's great. I'd be curious to know where most of these plates are being purchased. Is, I mean, a tendency toward certain counties or whatnot. Does that information exist anywhere? Or
I'm not sure.
No? Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, Alan, definitely piggyback off that if there's something you want to add about what you're seeing, what you're feeling. Obviously, we'll get into the film, but just this coexistence aspect and obviously the compensation and things rolling in from different avenues.
Yeah, the film that I did on the Mexican gray wolf, I did explore some of the compensation aspects here in Arizona, New Mexico, where the Mexican wolf currently resides. And there's payment for presence plans and all these things that exist, and in a lot of areas where wolves do exist throughout the West. And what I find remarkable about Colorado is it's not only is the support coming from Colorado itself, but it's the people. The people are putting their money where their mouth is, like we said earlier. And that to me is just astounding. I mean, you've got people that they want wolves back, they voted to bring them back, and they're putting their money where their mouth is to actually support the ranching community. That tells you something. I mean, that really drives home the whole importance of why wolves are coming back, and why I believe Colorado could be like, there's a character in our film who discusses why it could be like basically the archstone of wolf recovery here in the States. I mean, really, when you have that much support, because I mean, ranchers, it's a lot of identity-based conflict when it comes to whether or not they want presence of wolves. It doesn't really get into the wolf itself. It's more of the idea of the wolf and what kind of gets behind that. And so when you can take away the argument that wolves are the ones causing the problem by being able to provide the financial substance so that ranchers, it takes that argument away. In fact, even one of the ranching community people in our film she believes, because of the compensation program being the way it is, it's not going to affect ranchers. The wolves' presence will not affect it, because it eliminates the argument essentially that wolves are going to drive them financially down. So to me, that's just remarkable. The people of Colorado stepping up. I've never seen that anywhere. And it's imagine that done across the West. it would revolutionize wolf recovery, endangered species recovery. I mean, anything, any predator on the landscape, it would revolutionize. And I think that's just a great model that we can all kind of look at, take notes, and figure out how can we implement that elsewhere.
I know Stephen and I have talked about this a lot. Yeah. And we had a discussion with Doug Smith and Chris Servin just about, wolves and bears just last week or yeah, I think it was last week. And just the amount of, like Ryan was talking about, the amount of sides where things are starting to pick apart the ESA and how people, if you actually give them a path forward to promote coexistence, promote, helping their neighbor. And that's really what this comes down to, is helping each other out, is that saying we don't live the same types of lives, our lifestyles are different, but if we all find a compromise somewhere, that these things can actually happen. So Alan, with that being said, what was it like for you? What did you immediately think about this once this film, because I think it's about 20 minutes long is what I was reading on the website. When did this vision for the film come about? Was it right when the vote came down and said, hey, wolves are coming back? Was it a later process than that? Where did this all come about, and how did you and Real Earth Films say, hey, this is something we have to do and put forward?
Yeah, so I've been following obviously wolf related issues since I did my film on the Mexican gray wolf. So seeing the process go through Colorado since getting put on the ballot and everything prior to the vote in 2020, I've been following it pretty closely, and was always kind of in the back of my brain thinking this would be a really amazing story to cover and tell. And just happened to connect with the Endangered Species Coalition, and they were looking at trying to tell this story as well. And so it just made a lot of good sense to partner up with them, put a proposal in for what we wanted the film to look like. And one of the things I wanted to focus on, and one of the things they were also looking to focus on, is staying away from the conflict-based narrative that a lot of documentaries and wolf films kind of tend to do. They always kind of pit conservationists against ranchers, or ranchers against wolves, or environmentalists against ranchers. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that conflict-based narrative, it's kind of hard not to tell it. I mean, honestly, because that is kind of the story. So trying to find a way to actually tell a story that does not focus there, and instead, like what Ryan and his team came up with, is to celebrate the recovery of wolves. And so looking at different ways of bringing people together. How do we bring people together and make them feel proud of Colorado, what Colorado has done? This is the first time in the history this has happened with a predator on a landscape potentially. And that's worth celebrating. And so looking at those concepts, we discovered there's an easy, or not an easy way, but you can go into the story and find ways to celebrate that by bringing in the right voices, exploring those kind of difficult and challenging topics, but at the same time doing it in a way that hits more of the emotional, more of the spiritual element rather than the conflict itself. What makes you feel good about it? What the beauty of Colorado is astounding itself too. I mean, you've got these grand mountains. The scenery is just stunning. And when you look at that and you go like, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. And then there's no wolves there. Like it's just missing. And like Doug Smith in our film says, when you look at a landscape like this, if the wolves aren't there, it's vacant, it's boring. And I love that line, because a landscape without predators, a landscape without like animals like wolves, grizzly bears, and cougar, mountain lion, what is it? It's just scenery. You just look at it. When you have a predator, it adds wilderness, it adds wild, it adds so much more to it. And so that's something we're celebrating. Colorado's done it. They've brought it back. And I think, the way we've captured that in the film, we really, if we want to get into like some of the creative storyline elements of it, we can kind of go there if you want. But one of the concepts is we have lived alongside wolves for as long as mankind and wolf has been in existence, basically, modern man. And we've always existed with fire, man and wolf. I mean, that's where we got the domesticated dog, right? Throwing little scraps of food at the fire. Eventually, over time, that's where we get dogs. And, we didn't really focus on that really in the film. But what I love about the fire element, when you go camping, you sit around the campfire, you talk, you tell stories. Sit around the fire, you feel comfortable, you feel at home. And so it's this whole celebration of coming home. Just about every one of our characters, not everyone, but a lot of them, are sitting around a fire. And it brings that concept of we're coming to the fire to have a conversation, to talk about hard, challenging things. And this is what we've done for centuries, for thousands of years. And it's part of our DNA of who we are. And it's just a through line through the film that really drives home why wolves are coming home. Another way you could look at it is, for thousands of years, there's been that trifecta: man, wolf, fire. And then in the 1920s, 30s, when wolves were extirpated, wolves were removed from the fire. We killed the fire. We went away from the fire ourselves. Now the wolves are coming back. The fire is back and it's alive. The fire is burning. Wolves are back at the fire, but we as human beings need to come to the fire ourselves, have a conversation, and allow wolves and predators like that to exist. So that was one of the concepts that we kind of subtly put into the film and explored that concept of what is home? What does home mean to you? And for a lot of people in our story, the home is wilderness, home is wild, home is where you feel comfortable. Home is the fact that in our DNA, we're more comfortable with predators in the landscape than we are without them. And it's only been recently where we've been in an existence where we don't have predators. So that's what's been foreign to us. But we've trained ourselves to think that predators on the landscape is what's foreign. But realistically speaking, that's the outlier. Not having predators is the outlier. Being able to exist on a landscape with predators, that's what we're familiar with.
Who are some of the individuals that you ended up maybe leaning on to inform the science-centric parts of the film?
Yeah, we have a couple, actually. I mean, we did interview with Doug Smith and Mike Phillips as well, with the Turner Endangered Species Fund. And then Joanna Lambert as well. She's been really important in this story, especially with the Rocky Mountain Wolf Coalition, et cetera. Or Rocky Mountain Wolf Project. And those three really kind of drive that story. And then Matt Barnes also kind of brings in the concepts of how the range compensation program works and some of like the range management and such. And he has some really great lines too. So, I mean, these four characters really kind of drive the science of our story and really kind of helped drive in what home really means. And then we have 10 characters in total in the film. So it's a lot of characters to cram into a short period. But it's done in a way where you kind of move through the story and you really understand why Colorado is important and why wolves are coming home, because you go through the science, which is kind of like, we touch on it, but we kind of stay a little bit more spiritual with the science than we do with the actual, like, wolves come back, they change rivers and all the, the positive benefits. That story has been told 1,000 ways too. So a lot of people already know that. So we touch it, but we don't really focus on it. Our focus is more about that emotive part of the story that makes people happy and makes them really proud of the fact that wolves are back in Colorado.
Did you get any of that vibe from folks who were not, say, the Matt Barnes, Joanna Lambert, Doug Smith? Were you talking? I think I saw in the trailer there was one rancher in there, or cattleman. Did you find folks that were open to the reintroduction that were on the opposite side? What were the vibes that you got there, and what were their feelings as you were going through this process?
Yeah, so looking for people that could kind of tell that perspective, I kind of stayed away from the anti-wolf reintroduction side, just because I think that would have added too much of that conflict narrative into it. But I did want to get their voices told. And so we did interview with two people that work in the ranching community. One's the Pitkin County Commissioner. Her name's Francine Jacober, and then her son is a rancher there too. And his name's Ty Jacober. And they are really amazing people. They have a small calf-cow operation, as well as sheep that they run on the land there in the Carbondale area. And they're actually supportive of wolves. They're also hesitant about, they don't want wolves to just come in and decimate their livestock and stuff either. But they're also very supportive of the fact that wolves are coming back. And they believe that ranching in the landscape you need to be able to ranch around all predators. You can't pick and choose which ones you want. And they believe the ecosystems are healthier, more beneficial to the entire health of the area, having wolves on there. And they understand the relationship that wolves bring scientifically and behaviorally to the elk and to restoring the landscape the way it should be. And their voices, they say they're not alone. There's a lot of other people with that same concept. But one thing that is challenging is, a lot of ranching community, you can't speak your mind because sometimes you get alienated by the ranching community, which you've probably discovered too. So there's others that have that viewpoint, but they won't say it.
You're talking to the right guys. We've been trying. We've done the best we can to get all sides, and we have. But yeah, it's a tough forum to get folks to really speak their truth, and that's unfortunately a shame in the time and place that we are. Ryan,
I respect that too, because a lot of folks we've talked to, they don't want to talk because they've been burned by media or different films or different people, and so they're gun shy of expressing their viewpoints and opinions. So I applaud the fact that you're jumping in there and working to find those connection points. Yeah,
it's always a struggle, but I mean we play it down the middle, and we're here for the conversation, and that's always the best part. As obviously you were there to create this film. Ryan, when you see, I'm sure, have you seen the film, Ryan, in its entirety or not yet? You have. Okay. So without, I guess, giving too much away, what are your thoughts? And when you look at it, or when it was being put together, did you feel, was there any pushback? Were there folks that were looking forward to this film? Was there, I don't know, I would say, like, just, I guess, what was the overall feeling about this film being produced? Obviously, the world premiere is coming up, and Alan just laid out some really great characters and folks that are already in this film. What are the vibes you're getting from it? What's the general consensus, I guess, around the film so far, before it premieres, obviously, for those that have seen it?
Right. I mean, not too many people have seen the film so far. What I will say is that of the people who have seen the film, and there've been, a handful of people that we've shown it to, and it's part of the process of doing some final cuts and sharing with some folks. It has brought a large percentage of the people who've seen it. It has brought them to tears, happy tears, and so I think that's a really good sign. That's encouraging. And I think it really hits well and is doing exactly what we had hoped it would do, which is make that emotional connection and get away from the conflict narrative, get away from the, just the fact spewing and then the myth spewing and lies that come about wolves. Like that's all been covered a lot. Let's do something different here. And I think this project is, presents a well-balanced and thoughtful mix of voices around the issue. It's a celebration of a world's first, the species being restored by direct democracy. We had the voters make this grand moral decision that should we live with the species again, and voters said yes. And since then, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has been doing the technical work that the biologists and wildlife managers are really good at, and they've been getting them on the ground and carrying out these programs, and they're learning too. Like this coexistence work is new to a lot of folks, and we're figuring it out in our Colorado way here. But it's so awesome that we have like almost 30 years of experience from the Northern Rockies that we can pull from. And they have shown us up there that when you want to coexist with wolves, you can, and you can coexist with sheep and cattle, and have near zero, depredations on those, that livestock. And so this can be done. It's really just about getting buy-in, from everybody or as many people as we can, that critical mass of people buying into this and taking pride in it, that this is our project, that we're doing Colorado's way, and we're taking care of our wildlife and our people.
I will say this, I do applaud you guys for taking that angle, because again, as you've mentioned, it's usually the conflict. It's usually right one side against the other. But to put something forth that is a celebration, not only of the species itself, but of Coloradans and the state itself, I think is a totally new look. And it's something that's unique in this space, at least in recent memory that I can see. that a state taking pride for the most part in, as you say, doing democracy, making this huge, heavy decision, and now following through with many of the actions that they wanted to, creating a board, creating a technical working group, creating town halls, making sure that everyone is involved, as many voices as possible. And I think there's always going to be outliers there where people are upset, overexcited, vice versa, like you say. But if I think for the general consensus that, at least from afar, from what I've seen, and went and did an event, or we were there in Aspen doing a panel with Matt Barnes and Joanna Lambert and a couple others, it really does seem that Colorado has tried everything in their power to make sure that everyone is involved, every group is involved in some way, shape, or form. It's so tough to do. But I do applaud you guys, along with everyone else who's worked on this for so long, to make sure that these voices are heard in such a fashion that it's a celebratory aspect and a coexistence working relationship, as opposed to who can one up the other side. Not that that's what other people are doing, but it's just normally conflict doesn't, one side goes up and one side goes down is usually how it ends.
I'd like to say that I think that, it's really important to remember that it's only been 7 months, and wolves are new, and wolves, I think, legitimately, like if you've never lived with wolves, if you've never understood wolves, and this is true of grizzly bears as well, that if you don't know anything about them, if you don't have a relationship with them, they seem scary. They're a predator. They seem like something that could hurt you. It's not true. I mean, they don't hurt people, wolves. And grizzlies rarely hurt people too. It's usually how our behavior is wrong in those situations. And what I love about this film is that it kind of mirrors my personal life to a certain degree as well. After living about 10 years in Yellowstone National Park and moving back to Colorado myself, and experiencing that lack of the presence of the wolf and the bear and the bison. I had the great privilege of being able to move past those fears, move past that scariness at first. And that just takes time and experience with those animals and learning who they are and forming a relationship that is, I think, that's more of like wolves and bears and bison as kin, as relatives on the landscape, and that you become familiar with them, and anything familiar is less scary, and it allows you to form that deeper relationship that I think really allows you to move beyond and have a really reciprocal, beautiful relationship.
Yeah. And it goes without saying that you picked great folks to be involved. I mean, they're just intelligent and well-rounded, and they sort of discredit the stereotypes or the cliches of what have been said about wolf supporters. You have Matt Barnes, who's been passionate about rangeland science forever. He's very familiar with livestock and all the trials and tribulations of ranchers, and he's a wolf and reintroduction supporter. Doug, who's been arguably coined the wolf guy, and he's also he told us last week he's a recreational hunter, and you have Joanna Lambert, who's extremely knowledgeable about wildlife issues all over the world and has a very balanced perspective about wildlife issues and the related social implications. So, great insight and great group of folks, man.
Thank you. Yeah, there's one other perspective too we have in the film that it's powerful to me, and it's through the voice of Euphemia Soldier Wolf. She's Northern Arapaho, and I don't, it's not my story to tell, but the way she tells it is just powerful to me. Like she goes into the parallels between her people and the wolf, and especially when it comes to Colorado. And to me, that's another completely powerful part, because the wolf is coming home, and her people traditionally lived in the Colorado area. And we filmed her in a place called Arapaho Bend, which is a huge sacred ceremonial place for her people. And in her words in the film, her people were forcibly disenfranchised from that land, and just like the wolf was disenfranchised. And to me, that's another really strong element that we explored in the film a little bit. Was through her voice and through her eyes and through her experience of the importance of the land. And when you bring the wolf back to the land, you're bringing it back to balance, which is an integral part of her teachings. And to me, that's powerful. Got to watch the film. You got to see it for yourself to hear in her words, because, you know, every time I think about it, it just gives me chills.
And cool fact, she was actually at the original wolf reintroductions in Yellowstone as a child.
Wow.
Really?
Cool.
Yeah. It's pretty fun behind the scenes, arc there.
Yeah, I mean, in my experiences, the indigenous people that we've spoken to or heard speaking have knowledge. I mean, in a world run by, or at least led by technology, is easy to discredit, sort of, because it wasn't illustrated through familiar technologies, or they didn't have the tools to demonstrate it. But they've been on the continent for tens of thousands of years. I think it's easy to forget that, but they've been living very closely to the modern wolf, and their historical understanding of predators or wildlife in general is just mind-blowing. I remember at the Wolf Summit, we were introduced to a concept about bison and elk, and I won't get into it. It's pretty deep, but it's something that I think modern science is sort of now starting to tap into. And it's been in their stories and their understanding of the landscape and of wildlife relationships for ages. And I can't imagine how much knowledge is embedded into their storytelling that has real merit and is easy to sort of look past in favor of modernity or modern science.
Yeah, Yufna calls it traditional ecological knowledge.
Yeah, it's true.
It's an amazing, amazing thing because it's so intrinsic to their way of life and to their understanding of life that doesn't require teaching. It's just ingrained. And modern science is finally coming around to recognize that those things exist in the way they are.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
It's such a valuable piece that I'm sure we all know was lost for decades, if not probably a century plus. And the fact that it's being brought back in an important way, you guys are showcasing it. A lot of these wolf projects, more so these wolf policies, these wolf bills are asking, finally including native voices, tribal voices, individuals and groups that have known, like you said, known this land. Stephen, you said it great, and you too, Alan, have known this land way before any of us got here. And to be able to put that stuff into practice, and if you can combine that with the science aspect of it, you'd almost have a foolproof way of how to maybe right some of these egregious things that have happened in the past. If there's anything, Alan, in the film or from the film that you want people to get other than what you've already said, what is there a piece or a sentence or something that comes to mind for you as the filmmaker that you're hoping or looking for folks to maybe peel from this or take from it that maybe isn't the obvious?
I think I kind of touched on it a little bit, but I can explain it a little bit more. It's the fact that ingrained in who we are as human beings is the code to live alongside predators, is the code to know how to coexist with the wild in ways that currently we do not do. And we're getting better. We're taking steps like we did, like Colorado's done to bring the wolf back. And this film touches that. And I want people to be able to look at that and be like, not only can the wolf come home, but it can come home inside of us. It can return to the wild within us, because that's innately what we are too. We're part of the land just as much as any predator, any animal on the landscape. And if we can let the wolf come back to Colorado, to welcome it back home, let's welcome it back home in our hearts. Let us recognize that, we can live alongside predators, that we can coexist, and that is more our nature than to not have them in the wild.
I would agree with that. I want to, because this episode is going to air after the world premiere, but I do know there is going to be, I'm sure you'll be traveling and doing this, between yourself, Alan and Ryan, which whoever wants to take this, where are folks going to be able to see the film? Are you doing the film festival circuit? What are the ways that folks can not only see the film, but also support the reintroduction efforts that are happening? Because obviously just dropping the first 10 wolves is only the first step. I know they're going to be doing reintroductions, I believe, at minimum the next 2 year, well, this year, obviously, and the following in 25, depending upon how the wolves get along. So whoever wants to go first, I would say film and then how to support things moving forward. So I don't know who wants to go first on that one.
I can take this. So Endangered Species Coalition is going to be taking the film on a little tour around Colorado. And so there will be opportunities to see the film in its entirety at a handful of mountain towns on the western slope, up in the mountains. And we would like to get up to Fort Collins, maybe down to Pueblo as well. We'll see. We're working out the details of that at the moment. We're also planning to submit. We have submitted to some film festivals, so you will have the opportunity to hopefully see it in some of those. And eventually, we will be posting it for just general viewing on our website as well, because we want people to be able to see this and celebrate with us. And that website is endangered.org/welcome home. You can see the trailer there now.
Yeah, we were looking at the trailer just before you guys signed on, and it's beautifully shot. So well done. It's that drone footage just always, because Steven and I shot some stuff for Wolf Connection, or we had somebody come out, and it just makes all the difference when you get those huge aerials. It's unreal. Of course, Colorado's incredible. So when you do these tours, so I would say also, is there any other way? Obviously, if you're listening to this and you're a Colorado resident, you haven't gotten your license plate, I would say that's a good way to do it. What are some other avenues if folks are maybe from out of state, folks who don't want to get the license plate? What are other ways that folks can help the project along, help the film? Is there anything that anybody needs to know about that they can give their hard-earned money for if they want to see this continue to succeed and for the snowball to continue rolling down the hill in a positive way?
Yeah, I mean, I think, helping out nonprofit groups like Endangered Species Coalition to continue doing our work. I mean, it doesn't happen for free, and we have generous donors that continue to fund our work, and it's really our members and donors that continue to make this possible. So supporting organizations like us goes a long way to keeping people on the ground, working with ranchers, being at wildlife commission meetings, and doing that continuing advocacy there at the General Assembly here in Colorado. And you can do that from anywhere by just donating money. You can also do a lot of advocacy in your own state with your federal delegation, your representative and senators. Call them, talk to them, and make it an issue. I think raising that issue and saying that it's not okay to delist wolves and gut the ESA. Like, these are important things. These are important to me, and we need to protect this. Those voices really do matter and go and have impacts. We've seen a number of bad bills be killed because voters have shown up and made their voices heard around those issues. The other thing I will say is that we would love if people want to do a home screening, or if you have a theater or a place in your town that you would like to do a screening, reach out to me and let's see what we can do. We would love to help facilitate that.
Great. So that's good. So anybody who's listening right now, obviously get in touch with them. Alan, talk about Real Earth Films too, because it's obviously a nonprofit also. Sales pitch, the elevator pitch, for people to obviously continue your work and in this space, because clearly you're making a difference, not only for wolves, but for all wildlife. So just give everybody a chance of where they can find your work and other things that you're up to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Real Earth Films, and that's like a film reel, REEL, for those of you listening, REEL, realearthfilms.org. And not only do work for people like the Endangered Species Coalition and other organizations, but we also do our own films as well too. So currently I'm working on a story on the southern resident orca in the Puget Sound, to tell a story about the current issues that are around that population of imperiled orca, and working to raise funding for that. So we're currently in the process of raising funds, and roughly about $300,000 for that documentary. It's going to be a full length, hour-long documentary, but what makes our films unique that stand out differently from other organizations and films is that every one of the films that we produce on our own is going to have impact campaigns associated with it. So not only are we making a beautiful, gorgeous film that creates awareness and does a lot of all that good work, but we're going to be giving back to the local conservationists on the ground, the biologists, the researchers, the organizations doing all the dirty work, getting their hands on the species. So that's support with funding, that's support with tools and resources, education, et cetera. And my goal is eventually to get about, if the film is 300K, 200 of that's for the film, 100 of that is for the support. So we want to be very, very impactful. So not just, here's $5,000 to have a good day. It's just like, no, that we want to make significant, measurable impact for the species and the stories and subjects that we focus on. Another story is Burrowing Owls. You can check us out again, realearthfilms.org. Take a look there. But again, all of our work is to support conservation and nature in ways that can make big differences.
That's tremendous. That's really, really awesome. Instagram for both of you guys is Endangered Species Coalition and Real Earth Films. Everybody's on Instagram. They can find them there. Is that also another way? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Ours is just at Real Earth Films for pretty much all socials.
Okay. And then Ryan, what about you for Endangered Species Coalition? No?
I think it's Endangered Species Coalition.
Okay. All right. We'll have any of that stuff. Any of that stuff will be in the it'll be in the description once we find all that stuff. Really can't thank either of you enough for honestly the work that you guys are doing, putting this film together, and then really just promoting coexistence, which is always the great thing. And I love, Alan, again, getting back to the point of the film of coming home, having this triangle base, which strong shape. For those of you that don't know, a triangle is a very strong shape. So to have human, fire, and wolf together is really good. I'm gonna probably use that going forward in certain things that I say. That's fair enough. I just want to let you know because you're the one that coined it. My last question for both of you, and I'm going to go to Alan first, and then Ryan, you can answer this after that. When you hear the word wolf, what's the thing that comes to your mind?
When I hear the word wolf, what comes to my mind is like just wilderness. I think of the power of nature. I think of the raw beauty of the mountains, of pines, of rolling hills with juniper. I think of just the vastness and the openness to connect to yourself in ways that are powerful. So when you spend time out in nature, when you hear the cry of the wolf, and people talk about it as like bone chilling experience, but for me, it feels like home. Just to drive that point home even more, it feels to me like home. It's the best way I can put it. I can't think of a better place to be than in a landscape with wolves, and it's the whole panoply of species. That's what a wolf brings to my mind.
Ryan, what about you? You hear the word wolf. What's it that comes to your mind?
I have two things that come to my mind. The first is just a visceral memory of hearing wolves real close by in Yellowstone and encountering them there. It's a beautiful thing to experience. And then the other thing that I think of is as a mirror. I think wolves are very like us, and we are very like them, and that drives a lot of emotions one way or another. And so I see myself in the wolves and see humanity in the wolves as well. We're going to make of it what we see in it.
Love it. Best of luck on the premiere. Obviously, those that are listening, the premiere would already happen. But again, for both of you, best of luck on the tour. Those that are listening, if you want a home screening, let them know or bring the screening to you. And they will give more details, and we'll have those details updated on our Instagram when they give out the dates and stuff like that. Ryan Sedgeley, Alan Lacey, thank you both for joining us and talking about this incredible film and the work that's going on in Colorado with Wolf Reintroduction. Just hang tight while we sign off. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys.
House Teal out there. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody. Looking for more information about Wolf Connection or the podcast? Please visit our website at wolfconnection.org, where you can donate, sponsor a wolf, or become a volunteer.